Welcome to our last section for today and the last section of this incredibly productive workshop. I have the pleasure to chair this last part. We will have a little bit of a change of procedure. We will, because these three talks are really fitting very well together, they are presented by one research group, so unless there are very, very urgent questions after each of these talks, we would like to keep them together and have a larger Q&A session at the end of these three talks. We also will have a tiny little few minutes break after the second talk, but not with an extensive Q&A. So it is my particular pleasure to ask Farhod Maksudov to the podium. Farhod is the director of the Center of Archaeology in Tashkent and will give a talk on Highland Sogdiana and its regional neighbors. Please.
Yeah. Thank you. I would like to start by thanking the organizers of this wonderful, fantastic workshop, particularly Collège de France, Institute for the Study of Ancient World, ISO, and the Tank Center at Berkeley. Now, I would like to start with a little bit with the introduction to historiography of archaeological research during the last 100 years in Central Asia. After the national territorial delimitation, which is called национально-территориальное размежевание, in 1924, during the early Soviets, the Central Asian territory was split into 5 countries, and the urgent task was to write their histories, to find out the national heroes, to find out their literary languages, official languages, to formalize it. It was a huge process which started in 1920s all the way to 1940s. And in 1940s, there was one of the first academic books published by the Academy of Science at that time, history of Uzbekistan, history of Kazakhstan, history of Tajikistan, history of Turkmenistan, and all of the countries have written their own histories. In those histories, which were like volumes of 2-3 big books, every nation which was already like established, like Uzbeks, were kind of assigned their background heritage to the Uzbek political territory, which was delineated and which was proposed by the early 20th century Uzbek elites, which are called Jadids, where they focused on large urban centers. So the Jadids, when the process started, they said, we want to have in one country the large cities from Hokhand, Tashkent, Samarkand, Bukhara, and Urgench. Those were the capital cities of the 3 Khanates which were here before the Russian occupation, and they were focused on these territories. That's why the map of Uzbekistan and map of Central Asia is very strange. So, so it doesn't follow anything. No biogeography, no ethnic map, nothing. It's just lines. It's just lines which were drawn in 1920s. So that's why we have a lot of problems, because we have a lot of enclaves, exclaves in the Fergana Valley specifically. So the Uzbek academic book, which is History of Uzbekistan, was edited by Yakubovsky. And at that time, the main idea was that all sedentary civilizations and urban cultures of Central Asia are inherited by Uzbeks. So their histories go back to sedentary civilization. For Kazakhs, it was different. All the nomadic or like mobile pastoralist background was inherited by them. For Turkmens, they called, like jokingly, desert nomads. For Kyrgyz, they called mountain nomads. So there was a problem with Tajiks, because Tajiks and Uzbeks lived like very like close to each other, and you couldn't differentiate between the villages, whether it's Tajik or Uzbek. They were like bilingual villages, bilingual cities. But in from 1924 to 1930s, there was another small movement from Tajik elites who wanted to separate from Uzbekistan and establish their own country. But unfortunately, they only got like southeastern mountainous area of the Bukhara Khanate. In Uzbekistan, the Institute of Archaeology was established in 1970 and in Samarkand due to the anniversary, 2,500 years anniversary of the city of Samarkand. And it was the only Institute of Archaeology in whole Central Asia for many years during the Soviet period. And at that institute, if you look at the historiography, at the departments, at the programs, state programs like 5-year programs, Pятилетка, for archaeological research, they were all focused on urbanization, history of urban culture. Of course, there was like a Paleolithic and like Stone Age department. There were restoration and conservation department, but it was mainly the archaeological excavations and investigations funded by the government only in sedentary areas. But if you look at the geography now, the whole country of Uzbekistan has only 10% of arable land, and only 10% of the land was the place where sedentary and urban culture occurred. 90% of the territory is steppes, deserts, and mountains. And they were ignored and misrepresented during the Soviet period Uzbek archaeology. In Uzbek archaeology, if you look at the list of archaeologists, there are only a couple of scholars who studied kurgans in deserts, in the steppes, and in the mountains. And if you look at the result of the all programs which carried out during the Soviet period, which are archaeological maps or gazetteers, they followed the arable land. All of the archaeological sites which were identified and put onto the list are located in the arable land. With that idea in mind, in 2009, me personally and Professor Michael Frachetti from Washington University in St. Louis, we decided to study non-arable territory of Uzbekistan. Particularly, we decided to start with the mountainous region. And those areas were like pristine. No archaeologists went there. They kind of, if you look at the archaeological map, they have a line of almost like 1,000 meters above the sea level elevation. Beyond that, they didn't go. No Soviet archaeologists went there. We have chosen this area, which is located in the Malguzar range. You can see in the middle. It's on the border with Tajikistan, very close to Samarkand. It's located in Jizak province. And the archaeological map has nothing. The Soviet era produced archaeological map has nothing in those mountains. We started in 2010, 2011. We went to the field to study the Piedmont's foothills and then the higher edges and plateaus in those mountains. And the first results have yielded a lot of information. So this is the area we searched. In each river valley which goes beyond the arable land to high mountain, to highlands, we have found numerous archaeological sites. which were never visited by Soviet archaeologists. In 1 year, we found 50 new sites. 50. They are not very big, not very large, but they are archaeological sites, and you can see, with your eye, it's visible. And on the top of that mountain, there is a plateau which is called Bedana Dalası, or like Kural Valley. On the top, it's like more or less flat. It's alpine meadow. It's a nice place for pasturing. We have found a very interesting site which we called Tashbulak, this area. The local shepherds and herders, they call this place Tashbulak. That's why we gave this name to this site, because Tash means stone, Bulak, spring, so stone spring. So this area, on the surface, we found thousands of shards, fragments of pottery. All of them are of the same type, which are called by the Soviet archaeologists pseudo-Tripolia ceramics, handmade, painted, slip-painted pottery on the surface of this area, around 7 hectares in area. And we did different types of studies of the area, like we fly drones, we used geophysical instruments to study the area, like GPR, ground penetrating radar, magnetometry, geochemistry investigations, geoarchaeological investigations before starting digging here. This is the result of the magnetometry map we produced here. And it doesn't give a lot of information of the site, but this is the only way to find, for example, on the lower level corner here. Can I have a laser? Okay, if not, yeah.
Just go ahead.
Yeah. So on this corner you can see a regular structure, like several hundred dots, which are like square, not square, but rectangular. And the sizes are 1 by 2 meters of every dot here. We counted here more than 400 of them, and we have identified it as a necropolis. On the surface, you don't see it because of the high energy of the high mountain, slopey area. On the top, it was covered by like later natural sedimentation of 1/2 meter. So
Just the red.
just the red one.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. This area. This area in the middle shows there was a lot of movement of sediments, but magnetometry map doesn't show the structure itself. So we implemented GPR here, and GPR was able to see it. And now you see like changing in the video different layers. Every layer is 20 centimeters, all the way down to 200 centimeters. You can see the structures here. This is going on before any excavations, but GPR doesn't see the necropolis. Then we have identified some parts of the city, because this part was heavily built up, densely built up, and it's on a higher hill of the whole area. We decided this should be a citadel, and this is inner city, or kind of Shahristan, and all the surrounding area could be Rabat if you look at the site in classical way of Soviet archaeology, like citadel, Shahristan, and Rabat. So this is magnetometry map included here. So we have drawn everything here now by hand. And now remove the maps, and you can see, and then we started excavations. Every line which has been shown to us by GPR was true. We did like ground truth. And also the necropolis turned out to be a huge cemetery of medieval period. The pottery which we collected from here in the Soviet literature of Central Asia is dated from late 9th to 11th, 12th centuries AD. So we knew that this area is medieval, maybe like early Karahanid, late Samanid, but for Samanids we don't have anything yet. So this is the area of citadel. You can see here, and even with your naked eye, you can see some structures because afterwards nobody came here, no structures, no upper layers were collected here. So this is our tent town, and on that map you can see that architecture is made of rocks, stone architecture. All of the lines, they are like rock walls, and you can see even like streets, households. You can differentiate like specific certain households, families, streets, and like doorways, corridors. You can see everything here. So these are the walls, and it turned out to be using the radiocarbon dating from 8th to 11th century. All the data which we collected from the excavations here on the floors, but some of the walls you can see that they are on top of each other, so we have identified at least 2 or 3 so-called building stages, or the construction stages here. And they are from the early Islamic period to the Karahanids. So we have some numismatic material which goes from 10th to 11th century. One coin, I think this one is Ulugbek, 15th century, 15th century. One, I don't know, it's a surface finding. Then in the village surrounding, in the village where we stayed during the first year, which is called Beshkubi, a young guy came to us and asked for money for this stuff. We gave him some money. We have bought this from local people, and it turned out to be like this amazing mirror, which in Central Asia there are only 5 or 6 of them, and they are also dated to the same period, 11th, 12th centuries. During the excavations, we found a lot of like jewelry stuff. This is silver ring, and less than 1% of lowland production, pottery production, which is glazed pottery. Less than 1%. But everything which we found here, we think is imported from lowlands, and on the right side you can see the original ones at the same time. We only have shirts, and these are the original ones from lowlands. Okay. Yeah. But our main corpus of pottery is handmade painted pottery, which is this one. Very specific type of pottery. During the Soviet period, it was called, as I said, pseudo-Tripoli, because in southern Ukraine there is an ancient Neolithic, Chalcolithic culture which is called Tripoli, and they had specific, very similar type of handmade painted pottery. So I think the archaeologists who named it Pseudo-Tripoli, they came during the evacuation during the Second World War. They knew Ukrainian archaeology. That's why they brought this term to Central Asia.
Vatkin.
Vatkin?
Yes.
Yeah. He called it Pseudo-Tripoli because nobody
He
here.
called it польского типа.
Uh-huh.
He didn't have a stratigraphic excavation.
Yeah.
He said that it's some,
Yeah.
some ancient-
Here, nobody knows Ukrainian archaeology, so so that this term comes from South Ukraine. Now you can see that some of the design and ornamentation looks like modern ethnographic material from Central Asia, belonging to all nations of Central Asia. Tajiks, Uzbek, Kazakh, Karakalpak, Kyrgyz, all of them have the same type of fabric and production. We have a lot of stuff like toys. Sorry. So, and the main indicator for Pseudo-Tripoli is this type, which is called Murghabi. Murghabi type pottery. This is like two sprouts and one handle. This type of pottery is specific from 9th to 12th century for Central Asian area, and it discontinues after the Mongol invasion, as far as I know. And before that, we don't have it. At least we don't have it in like mass production. But here, this is the type which indicates this is Pseudo-Tripoli. Okay? But before Tashbulaq, none of the archaeological sites in Central Asia which were studied show more than 1% of Pseudo-Tripoli pottery. You have a little bit more, to 25%, you said.
So it needs to be calculated.
Okay, needs to be calculated, yeah. So our site is like Pseudo-Tripoli site, if you may call it. Okay? So then we investigated the necropolis. We, as I said, we have counted more than 400 here, and then we did some research around it here, and we now know that there are more than 1,000 burials in one cemetery. 1,000 burials. And we have excavated 41 of them. These are different types of classification of the burials. We found out that they are pit graves, L-type graves, which are called potboy, L-type graves, and they're just pit graves and L-type graves, two types, mainly. And the burials turned out to be strictly Islamic. Strictly Islamic, L-type, nothing inside, and the body is laid down from north to south, and the head faces Qibla. Qibla, southwest, for this area. In Islam, it's prohibited to throw earth onto the face, so the buried body should be in a camera, in a room. That's why they did these L-type graves. They cut the earth like that. They made a room, they put the body there, and then they just covered the shaft. But strikingly, the radiocarbon dates are very strange. Very early for the Islamic graves in the region. We know that Arabs started coming to Central Asia in the beginning of the 8th century, led by Qutayba ibn Muslim. But we know that after this period, for 150 years, there was back and forth struggle between Arabs, Turks, and Sogdians, whether they convert to Islam or not. And in the large urban centers, archaeologically, we know that the earliest Islamic graves appear at the end of the 9th, early 10th century in Bukhara, in Afrasiyab, Samarkand, and even in Turkmenistan, in Merv. But this Tashbulak necropolis shows that this village or town or any like type of settlement was maybe established like by Muslims already, ascetic Muslims, because the graves are very strict. They follow all the rules of Islam, but they're very early, 100 years earlier than lowland large urban centers, which again makes me think, like Christine told, peripheries as frontiers. Here, in terms of conversion to Islam, we can say that periphery was earlier than urban centers. Why? Maybe because in the urban centers, the Zoroastrianism and other religions, which were very strict in their own way, they resisted for a long time. But in the periphery, I mean, from the point of view of sedentaries, this is periphery. For the pastoralists and for the people on the move, this is actually center. And this was the area where they were open to any innovations, any new technologies, innovations, and new customs, whatever is coming to them, they could accept. Some of the graves, just one grave has this, some stuff, but it was a young girl. Then there is one, we did some bioarchaeology. This is a person with some problems, pathologies. This is, we opened the shaft like that, according to our grid, and then the ancient surface opened up here. After, and we have the shafts. So they are located over there. One of the questions was whether this settlement was occupied seasonally or around the year. So our colleague Alyssa did research on 40 excavated burials, and she has found out that they were burying the bodies in winter and summer because they were orienting by the sun to find out the side where to face the head, and the most western part where you have sunset, but during summer and during winter you have some angle. So our orientations has the same angle. So we know that during winter they also buried people here. Bioarchaeology also shows some pathologies related to horse riding. We are preparing now an article, a paper on that. Yeah, you can see this is the radiocarbon dating. Paleobotanic research shows that a lot of stuff were brought from lowland here because this area is not good for arboreal crops. No fruits grow here, no grapes, no wheat, nothing. But we find a lot of stuff which is imported to this place. By the way, now the closest village is 30 kilometers down. This area is 2,000 meters above the sea level. Yeah, grapes and other. Also, we did some, we carried out an isotope research for stable isotopes, and we have found out that on this image, we compare Tashbulak, which is this one, West Pamiralai, we call it. This graph shows the diversity of food people consumed at that time. From Otrar, from Jetesu in southern Kazakhstan, from Dagestan in western Turkmenistan, Fergana, Khwarezm, and Tashkent area. We compared the osteological material for isotopes, and we found out that nomadic or like pastoralist, mobile pastoralist had wide variety of food in comparison to urbanites. So, which is very strange because stereotypically, thank you, we think that urban population has better food because they live in comfort, but it turns out they're the other way around. The nomads have better food because they have larger, wider food networks because of their movement, because of their migration, and maybe because they are richer than ordinary urbanites. Recently, we did a small research with our Chinese colleagues, and they found out that in Chinese sources there is information that none of the medieval cities, there were no birds. They noticed that. No birds in large cities of medieval period in China. And they are relating it to sanitary epidemiological situation in highly dense cities, inside the walls, inside the fortress walls, and not good social situation, and very narrow food networks of people, and so that's why, and animals don't come. But okay. So then we did archaeometallurgy research. We found some workshops, and we did research of slag with University College London Professor Thilo Reren and his student Georga Kopula. Yeah, and we found out that they had steel production here. In medieval sources, early Arabs, they say that when you pass Samarkand and go towards Church of Fergana on the way, in Strushana Mountains, there is a city called Marsmanda, and it's a highland city which freezes during winters. No fruits grow there, but they have best markets for iron weaponry, and everybody all the way from Khorasan come to Marsmanda to those markets to get the iron weapons. So Marsmanda, I have been discussing this with Pasha, is the name of the 29th day in Sogdian calendar, Marspanda. And it turns out that according to Sogdian ideology, the last 30th day is the day of spiritual renovation. You cannot do any like practical work. You have to finish everything on the 29th day. You have to sign all of the agreements. You have to buy all of the stuff you want before the 30th day. So Marsmanda should be a day of like market, like Friday in Islam, Juma. So we think now our area could be Marsmanda because it's you can localize this area. It says it's in Strushana Mountains. It's between Tashkent and Samarkand and Fergana, and this is the only place. Thank you. Where you can localize that city, which produced the best weapons, and maybe like in later periods in the Middle East, in Near East, you have this so-called Damascus steel. Damascus steel is now problematic. Its origin, whether it's India or Central Asia. In Central Asia, we also have huge centers of steel production, like Aksiket in the Fergana Valley. And one of the sites is this new site of Tashbulak, and further to Gunbulak. This needs to be studied. Okay, so I'm talking about Karahanis here, but then 5 kilometers away from Tashbulak, in 2015, we have found another site which is called Tugun Bulak. Tugun means like a dam, dammed spring. It's another wide area, but it turns out to be larger than Tashbulak. It's huge, 120 hectares, and Michael will be talking about that, and Mireille will be talking about that. I give the floor to them. But basically, this is completely different from the Upper Zarafshan area, which I think should be like refuge of Sogdian rulers in dead-end mountain valley. Whereas our area is on the highway of Silk Road. One side goes to Samarkand, the other side goes to Fergana, and the third side goes to Zamin and Tashkent. So this area was on the highway, it was interconnected to all Silk Road, closest lowland cities, and you can find this evidence of interconnectedness of Tashbulak and Tugun Bulak. Thank you.
If there are no very urgent questions, I would like to invite Mireille Zhou from Washington University in St. Louis to the floor, who will present us research on reconstructing the hydraulic landscape in early medieval Central Asia. Welcome, and we're looking forward.
Hi, I would like to begin by expressing my sincere gratitude for the opportunity to speak in this amazing conference, and also thank you for the organizers to make this conference possible. Today we are gonna talking about the reconstructing hydraulic landscape of highlands in early medieval Central Asia. So before diving into this topic, I'd like to share the broader question that drives my research. So how did people engage with the surrounding environment? Specifically, I aim to explore human interaction with water in the marginal environment, and I would like to focus on the Tugun Bulak highland site in early medieval Central Asia. While there are many archaeological questions of the water, like how did past people perceive the water, and how did perception has developed over time, and what is the technological choice behind the choice of the water management system. But today, I'm gonna more focus on the practical aspect of water, such as the origin of water and types of water management system and the water flow direction. In this presentation, we will cover the following key sections, and we will start by looking into the study area. So as Farahad talked at the end of the presentation, our study area is Tugun Bulak archaeological site, and as you can see, it is located in the southeastern part of Uzbekistan, and it is located in the Zamin region. This is a map of Uzbekistan. So as we know, all the big cities are developed along the big river system and big oasis system. But the Tugun Bulak site is away from this big river system. This is a zoomed-in view of the site, and the Tugun Bulak site is located in the mountainous area at an elevation of 2,000 meters. Even though it is far from the big river system, but as you can see around the site, there is small mountain streams. But this mountain stream is not as large and not as water rich as other big river system, because this is the beginning point of the water stream. So if this water reaches the lowland, then it will eventually form a big river system. But at this point, it is more seasonal stream. This shows the LiDAR surface reconstruction of the Tugunbulak site, and this LiDAR map made by Michael Fracchetti and Farhad, and Michael is gonna talk about details about this LiDAR map. And this black line is called crest line. Crest line shows the prominent topographical ridge, which can help us to find the archaeological evidence and archaeological feature. And based on this data, we found that the Tugunbulak site is particularly significant because the large urban settlement of this scale, about 120 hectares, is really rare, particularly away from the big river system. And this blue scale shows the location of our last summer excavation. And Sanjo, Michael, Farhad, and I went to there for the excavation last summer. And we found one building complex composed of more than 6 rooms and 1 corridor. So this site is occupied by the Turkic nomadic societies from approximately 6 to 11 centuries. As you can see, the portion of this site is located on the highland plateau, and the nearest stream is located 50 meters below this site. So as we know, water naturally flows high to the lowland and concentrating in the lowland basin. So in the highland, without natural depression, people need to capture the water, which otherwise all the way go down to the lowland. So in the highland, without the natural depression or without the easily access to the valley basin, they need an artificial water system. And also, this site, as we can see in the crest lines, so there are really high density of the building structures in this site. And also, the archaeological evidence we found is the iron production. Based on this evidence, we believe that they needed a large amount of water to support their activities. So what choices did past people have for water management in this environment to support highland urbanism? This is where our research begins. So our research goal is to investigate the water system of highland by focusing on the Tugunbulak archaeological site. And our research questions are: how did highlanders of this site develop and manage water systems? How did people modify and use natural water system? To address these questions, first we compile archaeological examples of water systems to compare them with the Tugunbulak site. And then we made a geospatial hydrological model based on the 3D LiDAR model. Drawing on all these findings from these two analyses, we proposed the hypothetical explanations about how past people manage the water at Tugunbulak site. This illustrates the research framework for our work. We used 3 data sets to approach the hypothetical explanation of water use. And we are going to begin by looking into the conceptual model of how humans use water. So, what did past cities from the different period and from the different regions deal with the water issue? What are the mechanisms using and maintaining and storing and disposing of water? To address this, we make this conceptual model. This conceptual model shows the journey of water from nature to human use and then back to nature. So with this model in mind, we collected the archaeological examples of the water systems. So this is our research area. We focused on the Khwarezm, Sogdiana, Ustrusiana, and Fergana region from 4th to 12th centuries to collect the data to compare this water system to Tugunbulak. And additionally, we also expand our focus to the beyond the Central Asia to understand the better understanding of the highland water systems. So this table categorizes the type of the water systems identified in the comparative archaeological water systems. And so Yes, in this conference, there are many researchers who excavated in the many good archaeological sites like Afrosiab and Buhara, Sanjarshar, and Panjikent, and all these excavation research can help me to make this table. And we will go over some of these in the next few slides. So one of the water type is commonly found is the canal. We found the two types of the canal. One is the multiple tiers of the open canals directed from the natural water source on the place. And as you can see, this is the river, and the canal is developed from these river systems, and it has also many sub-branches, and these branches lead to the multiple archaeological sites. And also another type is the canals built on the mountain slope. It is commonly found in the Austrasiana region. And I found this example in the Spain medieval period. So this illustration shows the mountain slope canal really well. So as you can see, the citadel is located on the top of this plateau, and the river is down here. So the past people, they traced the river upstream until they found that the elevation of this river is roughly matches to the citadel. So they diverted the water by building the canal here, and they keep building the canal on the mountain slope to carry the water from the river to the citadel. We are going to talk about this kind of water system more in the last slides. And also there is Kanat. Kanat is the underground water system. And there are two types of Kanat. One is using the groundwater, and the other is using the surface runoff water. So this is river. River flows here, but because of this topography, they cannot make an open canal. So they have to make the underground channel here. Yes, and this kind of canal system is commonly found in Austrasiana region. And next is the reservoir and cistern. And reservoir is often connected to the canal. And this reservoir, the scale is the 5-meter diameter and 4-meter depth. And also, this is the example of the Iranian highland. And so all this scale shows the rain harvest installations. So they built these scale structures to collect the rainwater. And all these scale structures are connected by the inlet and outlet. So if the water exceeds, then the water moves from the one to the other. And eventually, all the excessive water is collected in the well. And next is the pipeline. Pipeline is made of ceramic or clay, and it is built in the stoneware structures, or also sometimes it is built in these kind of vertical structures. And so this pipeline is found under the street, and this is the underground pipeline which is connected to the drainage hole, and which was found in the bathhouse. And this is a drainage tank. Drainage tank is to collect the drained water, and this drainage tank is connected to the pipelines. And so this is also kind of drainage tank. And so this is the interesting structure because they use the ceramics. They stacked up all the ceramics, and all the ceramics has a hose on the bottom. So that's how they collect the water. And these ceramics are connected to the pipelines to collect the drained water. We also found the well and spring, and also the siphon mechanism and the water wheel to lift the water from lowland to highland. And also we are thinking of the people might use their manual transportation. They can all the way go down to the river, and they might carry the water using the animal or using this kind of pottery. And this is the stoneware drainage system for drain the storm water. So now we complete this illustration. So now we have an idea what types of supply system and what types of store system and what types of drainage system we might find in the Tugun Block site. So we've explored the artificial water system in Central Asia, and now let's move on to the model of the natural water flow. So the goal of this natural water flow reconstruction is to find the human modification in natural water source. We made two archaeological models, the sink model and the surface runoff model, based on the high-resolution LiDAR data, whose resolution is 2.5 centimeter. So the first one is the sink model. Sink means then the depression where water is accumulate without flowing out, and all the red area shows the sink. So my task is to figure out what are these sink indicate. And the next model is the reconstruction of the water flow on the Tugun Bulak side. So to make this model, we make different version of model. Because if we make the hydrological model in this whole side, then it's too big. So it means that the downward river flow, which is accumulated in the compared to down like lowland here, is emphasized, and it can lead to obscure the highland plateau to water flow. So we try to section this big area, and we make the water flow direction map in each section. So first map is the sink model, and as you can see, this circular and rectangular and square shape of the red color shows the sink. So this sink can indicate the drainage hole where the drained water is collected before exiting the building. Also, it can be well or reservoir, or it could be the result of the modern landscape modification. Also, this kind of sink can be made because of the other structures and other wall around this sink. The next model is the surface runoff model. So our goal is to find the anomalies of the natural water flow. So as you can see, this sharply curved water flow is not natural water flow. It means that there is a possibility that human intervene in this natural water flow. So this might be indicate the artificial drainage water system here. And as you can see, this curve is resulted because of the artificial drainage canal or because of the other buildings around this water flow. And this is also interesting. So if this crest line, the black crest line, shows the archaeological feature on the mountain slope, then they might need really good storm water drain system. Otherwise, the water all the way go through these buildings. So now we are going to look into the archaeological feature. And two types of data are used. First is the crest line, and second is the findings from the excavation site. So all this black line shows the crest line, which can indicate the archaeological feature. So we try to find some shape which can indicate the well or reservoir. Also, we are going to focus on this line on the mountain slope, and we are thinking that this could be the channel built on the mountain slope, and we are going to talk about this one more in the last slide. And this is where we did excavation last summer, and as you can see, the crest line is roughly matches to the structure of the room. So the blue square shows the location of the water feature we found. So we found the stoneware water channel in the building, and also the possible water channel, and the toilet pit, and also the big water jug, which my people store water or carry water using this pot. So now we collected all these three data. We have LiDAR data and hydrological model and crest line. Also, we collected many archaeological examples of the water systems. And by integrating all this data, what preliminary conclusion we can draw about the hydrological system in Tugun Bulak? So all this red scale shows the potential location and potential types of the water management system. And we are gonna focus on the possible water canal built on the mountain slope. So this is the satellite image of the Tubumbulak site overlaid with the contour line. And this red scale shows the location of our excavation site. And as you can see, it is located in the 1955 meter. And this blue line shows the mountain stream. And so here, the elevation of this stream is 1910 meter. It's 40 to 50 meter difference. So people might all the way go down to here to get the water and can go up to use the water. But also we found the trace of the water channel built on the mountain slope, and this purple line shows the potential canal. So to get the water, this canal has to be higher than this 1955 meter. As you can see, it's 1960, 1970, and it's 2000 meter here. And also this stream, this point is a 1910 meter, but if we go here, it's 1950 meter, and if we go more upstream, then it is 2000 meter. So we are thinking that the people built this water channel, and they can build this channel by diverting the water from the upstream here, or also there is many gullies here, and so the water flow along this gully. So maybe people can make the channel diverted from this gully. Also, this green part shows the spring, and they can also use the spring to divert the water from spring to this water channel. So this is our hypothesis. Yes, and this map, the blue line shows the potential water channel we are thinking. So now we have many hypotheses about the location and types of water system in Tubumbulak site, some of which are correct and others will be wrong. So this summer we are gonna go to the excavation site again. So we'll excavate in the new area, and also we try to do some test pit trench in the candidate of the water system we found based on the sink model and these crest lines and the water flow model. So our goal is to make the more robust model. So by validating this model through the excavation, we think that our model can become more robust. So as we know, so because of the limitation of time and money, we cannot excavate all the area. So I hope that our model can be applied to the other side and this side to find and to figure out the hydrological system in the highland settings. Thank you so much for listening to my talk.
I have the great pleasure to invite our last speaker, my dear colleague Mike Frigetti. Oh yes, and we do have a very last speaker. Michael Frigetti, Professor of Anthropology at Washington University St. Louis, who will wrap up this last session with a talk entitled Highland Cities and Silk Road Interactions Across Sogdiana and Ust-Rushana. New medieval discoveries at Tashbulak and Tubumbulak, Uzbekistan. Michael, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, so as you know, this is a continuation of the last two lectures in a sense, and it was a bit kind of funny of how to order it, but we thought that it made sense for me to wrap up the session. So I'll have a little bit of repeat, but try to keep it as novel as possible. And the goal here really is, I'm first of all extremely grateful to be here, in part because if you had asked me 15 years ago, would I be engaging in and contributing to the world of Sogdian archaeology, I would have told you no, because I'm trained as a Bronze Age specialist. When Farhad and I walked across the mountains, as you see there in the upper part of this photo, in 2011, and saw Tashbulak, we embarked on our journey into the Sogdian and post-Sogdian medieval world. Farhad had already dabbled, or had been there in some sense in his own research, but I certainly had not. But perhaps it is with those fresh eyes and that capacity to come into a field as an outsider that now I feel more as an insider 15 years later, that we can offer some novel ideas about what was going on in the broader world of Sogdiana in a way that has been illustrated already this morning by others like Pavel. Right, so let's just get to it. And please, I know this is meant to be a lecture and all that stuff, but I don't mind being stopped if there's something in particular, because we are going to do a panel kind of question session. So I think that it makes sense just to either write your question down or just grab me immediately while the slides are there to save time. Okay. So let's get the first thing out of the way. You may have seen about 6 months ago this huge media blast all across the world about this big LiDAR discovery. And I was very honest when approached by journalists. I said, no, we discovered the site 10 years ago, 15 years ago. This wasn't like we flew LiDAR and immediately discovered this place. But we had a communication problem. And that was when you, and Farhad kind of alluded to this, when you tell the archaeological world that something exists that shouldn't exist, they don't believe you. And so how do you demonstrate an enormous site of incredible complexity that exists in a place that probably shouldn't be? Now, Tashbulaq was one thing, but it fit the rubric a little bit, right? We had a 10, 15 hectares. It wasn't so, it wasn't so mind-boggling. But when we started to really map out, Tashbulaq, when we started to map out Tugun Bulaq, it's the big brother here, we really began to realize that something was out of the ordinary, and that's what I want to share with you today. So let's set aside the hype and move now to the details. You've seen this map a few times. Pasha had a nicer version of it in a sense of the Zarafshan Valley. We are a couple of clicks north of that, right? So we are in the Malguzar range, which is a smaller foothill range, albeit quite high. And in fact, if you look, Hisarak may even be, Pavel, you can correct me, it may even be off the map. I'm not quite sure, but is it okay?
Okay.
More or less. But if you think of the contour, 2,000 meters runs up and kind of hangs around like this. So it goes up higher, but in fact, Hisarak is at 2,400 or 2,500?
2,200.
200. Tashbulaq is 2,200. So don't be misled by the geographic positioning. In fact, this plateau is quite high. So we'll be talking about the sites in red. We've heard about these sites today. I won't say much more about them, but I put them there because these are our closest allies, if you will, our closest ability to understand and juxtapose what we're finding in the Malguzar range with essentially the corpus of known archaeology in the nearest mountain setting. Okay, so I won't say more because, of course, we've heard about these places. We all know Panji Kent very well. Hisarak, I was so excited when I started reading about it. We finally had something to compare our world to, albeit there's lots of differences. And of course, I had visited Sanjar Shah in 2009, before many of the excavations had started. And it's lovely to see, again, this amazing work coming out from Michael and Sharof as they expose this sort of the tail end of the Sogdian ideological and political world as it interfaces with the Arab world. I put these here on part also to sort of illustrate some of the chronologies, because our chronology will cross a number of centuries between both Tugun Bulaq and Tashbulaq, which reframes a little bit the political world that we accept and have seen typically as part of the Sogdian conversation. Of course, there's also the site of Mik. I'm not sure how many of you have actually visited the site of Mik, but it's not easy to get to. Farhad and I drove there with our National Geographic photographer and a drone in 2018, and hiked up there and actually saw the place. I'm not sure if Svechkov has seen it recently, but it's in still okay shape. But anyway, these are photographs from 2018, drone photographs, and mostly drone. These are both drone photographs. But you can see, again, another one of these sites, but really different. I mean, this is significantly smaller. And again, I can't go into it in 30 minutes, but some different types of sites around this region that fit into a bigger picture that we're trying to understand. Today, I want to talk to you about Tugun Bulaq. Farhad already introduced Tashbulaq. Tashbulaq is at its most 10 hectares, and that includes like outer structures. The architectural core of Tashbulaq is about 7 or 8 hectares. Tugun Bulaq is a beast of another animal, of another type. It is minimally, and I say documentably minimally, 50 hectares. So I can document walls at 50 hectares. And as I will illustrate to you now, I think convincingly at least 100 hectares, if not bigger. So we'll talk about that and you can tell me what you think. I want to say a few words about the resources that are here because this is an undercurrent of the narrative. I think in Pasha's talk he mentioned deforestation. Well, for deforestation to occur, you have to have forests. And this is one of the major elements of both highlands in general, but of course of highland sites that are interested in making metals. You need to burn something in those kilns that gets hot and that can be expediently acquired. And interestingly enough, Tash Bulak and Tugun Bulak are situated in what is today a national forest. So an area of natural juniper growth. And there'll be some photos you'll be able to see throughout. That forest has been largely restored, or not restored, poorly restored, let's say attempted to be restored. But there are portions of the upper Zamin highlands here where the forest is better protected, and you actually have the relict trees going back to at least 800 years. I can say more about that in the questions. We've done dendrochronological studies of those trees, so we have some climate information about when the trees, or what they show, but they don't cross over with our chronology yet. So we're still working on that front, so I won't say too much more. But just for people who wonder if 2,000 meters is really high altitude, I want to point something out. This graphic shows the tree line at 40 degrees north latitude at roughly 2,000 meters, starting at 2,000 to 2,500. If we were in Tibet, the same ecological niche would be at 4,000 meters. So just moving to 10 degrees or 15 degrees south in latitude, you have to go up an extra 2,000 meters. This is proven, this is proven by ecologists. If we were in the Andes, similarly, we would be between 3,000 and 4,000 meters. So when you think of Machu Picchu is only 2,400 meters in elevation. It's actually a lowland site. Okay, what is the evidence that shocked us in the first instance? So in 2015, we drove into the site upon a tip from a local forestry service man, and we came down the road off the highway and we saw these massive structures. This one here, you see this rectangular pyramidical mound, another one next to it, and in fact, as we pan through the next videos, you'll see more. We decided then to revisit the site on foot, and we walked in on the ancient road from Tash Bulak. There's an ancient contour that you can see. It's clearly the ancient road. I mean, it's an ancient road. And it leads you, unsurprisingly, through a gate on the other side of this ridgeline, and you can see these massive rectilinear shapes under the ground. We actually had our photographer run across to the other side of the mountain to photograph us in scale, so you could begin to understand how broad and extensive the management of this landscape actually is. This is well outside. This is 500 meters outside of the LiDAR image. So these walls are not even included in the LiDAR image. So when I think about the scale of how much construction goes into the entire landscape, it's like you have an urban core, but you have management that goes far beyond. And these are these walls, which we will test this summer. Another view from high up, you begin to appreciate the size and the positioning of Tugun Bulak. This is only the first 3 towers. So you can see here the wall structure of the upper ridgeline, a kala structure, I'll show you from the air in a minute, and then these very steep terraced structures going all the way down, and then this massive platform tower, which we will excavate this summer. Just because you have this beautiful view, you can see this is the tower we excavated this summer, and I want to point out to you these interior walls. So there's another layer of walls here, and again, I'll show you different angles on this so you can really appreciate how it's structured. Looking at this with your eyes, this part is quite evident. You can see that there's stuff there, and there's archaeology. But what about where we're standing? And what about the rest of the valley that I'm including? How do we appreciate that? And so when I said to people, this place is really big, they said, oh, it's a tower, it's a lookout tower. We know about those. There's lookout towers in the mountains. And oh, it's a castle or whatever. We know about those, right? There's books written about them in Tajikistan. I said, no, trust me, this is something different. So how do you do it? In 2018, Uzbekistan changed the rules. You could bring drones. So I brought a drone, and we passed by the first mound. Oh, let me go back quickly. I want to pause occasionally. Let me just, okay. Oh, Sorry, how do I do that? Okay, there it is. So here's the first citadel mound of sorts. We call them citadel mound. They're just mounds, tepas, right? Now we don't know what each of the mound is because we have new information. But here's one big one. It's about, this platform here is about 60 meters or 70 meters on either side. Sorry, how do we play this thing now? Play. Okay, let's fly through. I said the labels are part of the video. I have to go back and edit. The dates are wrong as well. So now we're panning out over the southern half of the site. We'll come back. Here you see 1, 2, is that Kala style structure. I'm going to zoom out. This is from the ground level, where that first one is. You can just kind of see some of the structure here. And now we're panning all the way across. So here's our outermost one. Architecture goes all the way down to a potential wall line, cutting across another set of terrace structures, another valley, and then this incredibly strange feature, possibly a road with something here, another major tower, about 25 meters on the side, a wall line going around, and then there was this channel cutting across, and then another one, and then another one, and then possibly up here on top another one. That's only the ridge line. Okay, I wanted to show, again, the line that I was talking about. So those are the mound ridge. So we'll call that the heavily fortified, heavily urbanized ridge, let's say, with tons of structures. And that's about 1 kilometer from end to end, a little bit less, 900 meters. And now we'll see on this ridge here, this line. This is what Mireille was talking about.
Small dots of pistachio fields.
Yeah, this is a line cutting across, and it leads to the other tower. So this could be this water line that Mireille was talking about. Now you're seeing that one where the gentleman lives, who tipped us off, and then the other ridge line. But there's this side of the site too, which I want to talk about in more detail. With that video in mind, we were able to start talking about the site in greater scale. Just to see it live, we came to the Tang Center. I availed myself to the Tang Center and said, we have something really special. Sanjot joined the project. We really moved forward with a different sense of urgency. And simultaneously, my university acquired an $80,000 LiDAR drone. With that piece of technology, where I can go to Uzbekistan with about 45 documents to bring the thing in, it's a huge drone, we were able to fly what is today probably the highest resolution archaeological map ever published. 2.5 centimeters over 200 hectares. And that's because we're doing LiDAR from a drone. This map, which we can zoom into literally the size of your thumb, gives us the capacity to start teasing out of the geography details that we couldn't see before. So the part that I showed you up until now was essentially Sector A. This is the big tower, the middle tower, the Kala style thing, the wall, the line goes across. The house is here. This is that one where the video started, so in Sector B, and then there's another one here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, with potential other ones actually up in this area that we didn't see until the LiDAR. Then there's this entire zone here, which has right angles, this massive right angle here, and also other plow zones, and this is all area that has been plowed for fodder crops, but you see terracing. Now, this requires testing, but I want to show it to you in another light. What we have done is, because we have 2 centimeter resolution, it means that any little bump higher than this, we can use machine learning to detect whether it's a real bump or not. So we run this through a high-resolution machine learning algorithm, and it pulls out all the little ridge lines, including every field plowed and every other element that's on the surface. And what it produces is, this is a cleaned version, obviously, but what it produces is a map of the city without us ever, or at least Sector A, portion of the city, without us ever moving any dirt. Okay. So you can see the walls around each of these centers. You see these sort of honeycomb or these kinds of repeated stalls on top of this mound. You can see the squares. You can see the potential road. Comes up, goes through here. Right? So there's a gate through this massive wall here. You can walk through it as high as the ceiling here. So we can gather a lot of architectural detail in this area here, which is, like I said, about 45 hectares, depending on where you draw your lines. Okay? So just that Sector A alone is already phenomenally detailed in terms of what we can say. And now we begin doing target excavations. And you can see in more detail now some of those factors. I can't quite see my own slides here, but you can see the terracing, you can see that large fortification or whatever that building is. We called them fortifications at the time because we expected them to be fortifications. Now we know something more. This one is not exactly a fortification. This wall line here, okay? So this is an area that's completely confusing. These structures and lines, they don't make archaeological sense to me, to be honest. The curve could be a wall as you kind of come up through some entryway past this outer wall, or you come down from the highlands. You might go around this large circular thing. Maybe it's a market, maybe it's a cemetery, maybe it's, we don't know, we haven't dug yet. My point is there's lots of confusing things, but there's other things that aren't so confusing. Like this structure here is very clearly a corner tower, like the fence, the classic kind of rounded corners that we see across Central Asia. So they're certainly adopting elements of architectural planning and architectural features that are typical of cities of the time. In Sector B, I just point this out quickly, you can see again this square tower here, less clear but nevertheless a nice right angle on this structure. And again, if we use the crest lines to highlight some of this, we begin to pick up some of these channels and other potential quadratic features. And you might say, oh, Michael, you're just like doing drugs and looking at pictures of lines and none of it's actually very real. Well, we also did the same thing at Tash Bulak, because Tash Bulak we had the advantage of 10 years of excavation and detailed geophysical research. So we combined the methodology of LiDAR, which I showed a few slides back, but I didn't mention it, I didn't point it out. I combined the LiDAR map from Tash Bulak with the geophysics map. Now, the geophysics map, we then ran through another algorithm that traces the center line of the black lines. So these black lines are architecture. We ground truthed that for 10 years. And we used the algorithm to say, give us the most dense center line of any of the actual architectural features recorded by GPR, by radar. And then you can see this kind of like quite messy, but the darker lines kind of pop out. You can see a bit the plan, right? I also paid undergraduates for undergraduate architects in my university, who are very smart and very talented, to go through every single GPR layer that we have, and they traced and drew an architectural plan of Tash Bulak in detail over 2 years. And that's the blue map. Okay? So that's as accurate as a human being can do by tracing GPR with using very, very clear and meticulous architectural techniques. That's how they match up. So the lines of the crest lines and the lines of the GPR and the lines derived from the GPR all match up to show that there is correspondence. Now, there's still noise, so don't confuse yourself. There's still lots of noise. There's things in the crest lines that are not architecture. So let's for a moment leave the crest lines apart and just take a look at what we see with our eyes. If we take, for example, this area, which is disturbed by plowing, and we have some features that we identified, what does it look like in real life? This line running up the slope and taking a right-hand turn, and in fact running across the other way, which is here, is not a naturally produced line. Now, I can't guarantee that it's a Sogdian wall, but it sure as heck isn't a natural line. Now, we will test it and know, but that's what we're picking up in the LiDAR, are these features that don't exactly appear to be natural. And of course, in this section I already showed you, these towers are very clearly evident. So of course, we're archaeologists, we need to get our hands dirty. We went back in 2022 after the pandemic and did some test excavations in order to get preliminary chronology. And in fact, this was the year we flew the LiDAR. So it wasn't, the LiDAR didn't get done until after we'd already begun some of the other work. So it's a bit out of chronology, but here nevertheless we started digging, got the LiDAR machine, and in 2022 really tried to lock in all that I had just shown you. In 2024, however, with the advantage of the LiDAR map, we went back and put in a much larger trench. In this case, each of these boxes is about 5 by 5 meters, so it's like 10 by, so it's something like 250 square meters of excavation. So it's like 20, or 10 by 10, that's 20, another 5, so you got it, right? And that's right here on top of the mound. So you see these lines, and we're rotated 90 degrees from this image, but you see the lines are exactly what we see in the LiDAR. So again, ground truthing what the crest lines show to what we see archaeologically. And now is when it gets to be fun. What we found this past summer was a repeated pattern of linear workshops, which look, from the air, we thought we were going to have a garrison. I was telling everybody, oh, we're going to go dig a big garrison, and we're going to get weapons, and we're going to have swords, and the Topkapi Palace is going to call us, and they're going to have... No, we found a workshop, but a big workshop. I would call it an industrial scale factory. Okay, this is a repeated pattern where you have kilns in every location. So you walk into a room, you have a set of kilns, you have other features of kiln, 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 right? And now these are different kinds of furnaces. Each one of them is potential. There could be some that are domestic. There's some that didn't have metallurgy in them. But again, as you look at the features, we have some of these things. I mean, I saw some of Pavel's images. I mean, we have features. I think we have a granary. I didn't know that until this morning. This looks like a kitchen off the edge of this workshop. So it looks like the back end of this one either was repurposed in a later phase as a kitchen, or it was indeed a kitchen within. There's a wall. This is a later wall that's built, but then you see kind of a doorway here, right? So there's sort of a kitchen space, so it could be quasi-domestic, and there's a sofa here. So you have a little space for whoever stays there maybe in the wintertime, I don't know. But you also have in this corner a huge iron smelting kiln. So iron artifacts, and I'm sorry, iron slags coming out of the actual thing. And if you don't believe, here's Farhad smiling with a massive piece of iron slag in his hand. It's like, 10 kilos. And they're sitting in the bottom. You can see them in situ. And then you see the air channel running this way all the way to the other side of the workshop. So we're definitely have iron production here. We don't know yet if it's steel, what the stage of the production is. I mean, I'm not an expert in metallurgy, to be honest. Like, we have to get now Thilo or others to come in and say, okay, here's the stage that this particular factory was working on. What I can tell you is that around the site, just outside of this mound, to the front end of it, where we excavated in 2022, we also had smaller kind of metalworking and pyrotechnological kilns. So there's other workshops going on in that space just outside the big tower. And there's abundance. We have also huge kiln walls that are built into the later stage of the thing. So huge chunks of kiln, like this thick, with kaolin faces on them, used as building blocks for the 10th century. So there's stuff all over the place that's being reincorporated into later architecture. So the kilns are many, and the kilns are large, and they definitely have kaolin all over the insides. Kaolin, can someone explain it? It's like a porcelain clay, hyperheated clay, basically, right? So this is from high temperatures in the process of smelting. The other, one was reconstructible, kind of. The iron was in very bad condition here because we have higher precipitation, higher humidity. Here's the nicer of the three arrowheads, which is a tri-pronged big battle arrowhead. This thing's, as big as the end of this, right? 3 or 5 centimeters. And then the personal inventory, we have two earrings, which Farhad has a story to tell after questions. Please ask him about the 2 earrings on the individual's ears. We have animal style or zoomorphic buttons. They're zoomed in here. We have an amazing set of coins wrapped in textile, which we have not opened because I don't know how to open it. So someone, please, I don't want to destroy the textile, right? So, I mean, we've just left it now. It needs to be restored. So a huge amount of our work now requires conservation and material attention because we don't want to destroy these pieces as they are. There seems to be about 3 coins stacked, and these were in the purse. So the coins were in the purse. These are other buttons. These are just square buttons, a ring apparently, or small maybe pinky ring, or maybe some other form of embellishment from the quiver. So all in bronze, it seems, but nicely preserved. This is all in very good shape and fairly stable. So when does all this take place? The lowest levels corresponding to the kilns are what we call phase 1. These date from 560 radiocarbon modeled years. This is, in fact, if we don't model them, it goes earlier. But modeled years, the start date of the site is about 560, 555. Phase 1 goes into phase 2 without really any major break. But this burial does seem to seal the first usage of the structure. So thinking about the burials that we saw throughout the day today, there were some burials that seemed to be in these like Sogdian style, like they're like bodies in rooms, right? They were burial rooms or something. This is kind of atypical for Turks. Normally you get a kurgan, right, with a horse burial. Here we have a full horse burial with full adornment in the house or in the workshop or in this factory. I would interpret that as a event of some consequence, that they buried themselves or a person in their space, right? After which the continuation of the chronology goes, and I'll show you a coin in a minute. These are from the previous year's excavations, and so we did some sampling across any other excavations, and the site does indeed go up to the 10th century. For reference, I put next to you the Tash Bulak reference, Tash Bulak chronology. Tash Bulak starts around 750, let's say, 730 if we take the earliest burial. That's about the time when this first hiatus of the central mound seems to taper off. Now, there's later occupations. We know that the mound is occupied again in the 9th and 10th century. There's like small pit houses and other things using the architecture that correspond with the primary architecture that you would have seen in the LiDAR map. That's the most late phase. That's the 11th century phase, okay? So most of the architecture that we can now document would be the most recent. But the mounds, because they're steeper, anything that would have been on top of them has eroded off. And so what we're getting is essentially a portal into the earliest 1 or 2 phases of the site's occupation at the mounds, right? The rest of the architecture fills in up and around them, and if there was occupation again of the mounds, then maybe it's gone, or maybe we can't say. There's nothing much, there's only a couple of small indications of like ephemeral type houses on the top of the mound, again, using old kiln walls and things to build kind of bases and foundations. But Tash Bulak seems to pick up right when this leaves off, at least that central mound, but we do see the rest of the city continuing. Is it possible that these Turks, who were buried in classic Turkic ideological fashion, adopted Islam and said, we don't want to live with you heretics, and built themselves another camp 3 kilometers away? That's my current hypothesis, I'm not kidding. The material culture is interesting. This is just from 2024. This is last summer. We're not in a domestic context, so we don't have a huge amount of tablewares and cookingwares and that kind of thing generally. But we have all, again, handmade material. We have only 3 tiny fragments of glazed ceramics that come at probably in the very, very upper layers under the grass. So latest phase of display from the 9th and 10th century on the main mound, on that main mound. All of these pieces, we have bells, we have slate or some kind of stone beads, we have spindle whorls and bead. This is probably actually not a spindle whorl, this is a large ceramic bead actually. It's shaped like this, it's too small for a spindle whorl, it's a large bead like you would wear around your neck. Again, these are some of the steel artifacts from the arrow, from the burial. Larger vessels, smaller vessels, interestingly with these like little impressionists, these dots that go on the handle, kind of a characteristic piece of the material, but all handmade. Larger water vessels and storage vessels, kuvshini. So here's a nice version, this one's, knee, little thigh high. And these are always found, of course, in the corner of the room, right where you would expect water storage. We've seen this pattern before. An intriguing find. I'm illiterate in English, let alone in Turkic runes. But could it be Turkic runes scratched into the bottom of this piece? I throw it out there for those who know things of such nature. I'm almost as interested in the handprint. This is the inside of the tandur. When they make it, then they take mud and they smear the mud on the inside of the tandur. And you have, in fact, the handprint of the actual individual who built the oven. This is something that in English we call WTF. I have no idea what that is. No, this is large. This is like this big, made of cement, of clay, made of ceramic. It either could be for building the tandir, like pounding. It could be in the paksa construction process, or something else. It's heavy. It's like not for crushing because it's made of ceramic. So if you hit stone with it, it will break. So it's some kind of hammer or stamp or could be a stand, a pot stand or something. It was very close to an oven. So this is also,
It's slightly fired, right? Is it slightly fired?
yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it's slightly fired, yeah. So it's probably made expediently, and then they put it in the oven like this. Anyway, interesting find. I knew that this crowd would tell me immediately. You've already seen Farhad show this slide. We don't have much of this, but we have some. And the reason why we don't have much in this particular setting is because it dies in the 8th century. But from our earlier excavations of 2022, we do have it. So it does come with this sort of second phase, but it's not oriented around this 8th century. This is post 8th century, or at best it's end of the 8th century. We have a few odd pieces of fineware or things that don't kind of fit the mold. These are our 3 minor fragments from Turgun Bulak so far of glaze, which are classic, 9th, 10th, possibly 11th century. Scarfito and this kind of typical white and brown. This could be a Sogdian teapot or something. This one here, it's wheel made. It's kind of that yellowy, buffy ware.
Well, it's a typical handle of
Jug.
of the jug.
Yeah, yeah. This one piece there. Again, a few pieces like this pop up. Perfect. Please, someone can read this, if you can. The instructions are here, Pavel. But these ones, I don't even know what. Pseudoepigraphy. No, it's nothing.
It's pure consensus.
So I'm glad I put, can you read it? Because I wanted to see who would raise their hand. But this is for you, Sasha. This is Sasha's slide. You see his face there. I stole it as a proper nomadic thief. I went here and I took his slide from his talk because he had recently just published this wonderful study of these Zamin coins. And we have in situ a coin in this series. Sasha said he needed to check his corpus to give me the exact year. End of 7th century. This is above the burial. At least stratigraphically, it's around the same level. So the burial, the ceramics, it's all looking like 7th century or early 8th century at the earliest. And this is the ones that have been published from hoards. And if you kind of create a little bit of a circle, we're either on the outer edge of a small circle or the middle of a bigger circle. Is it possible that given the scale of the place and the fact that Zamin, which had been traditionally seen as the major center for the region, but is much smaller in terms of its overall capacity, again, if in fact we are at 120 hectares, we might be the major center for these coins, and we could be the seat of that, or who knows. I have other slides to talk about the other part of the site, but that will take more time, so I want to wrap up. The political scenario in the 6th to 7th century of Central Asia is extremely complex, as per Bregel's quite interesting maps. I mean, for all that goes on, this is a great map, I have to say. But Tash Bulak and Turgun Bulak are along these major routes, if we believe in those kinds of things. But more importantly, they are at the interstitial connectivity between the blue and the red, in this case. The blue being the nomadic world, the red being the Iranian sedentary world. And I think that this draws us into a question of what are these likely Turks? The signals are all pointing to Highland Turks as an identity. What are they doing building a city of this scale, of this complexity, of this magnitude? Oh, and by the way, all the architecture is Paksa so far, except for the stone small foundations. The big center is Paksa, just like we have at Sanjar Shah. 1.5 meters, 1.20 meters walls, 2 meters deep, interfaced. They're clearly articulated with Sogdiana. They're clearly doing something quite different. Farhad already showed the trade and the interaction. We have a similar array, I think, preliminary data on the botany, etc. I mean, we won't have time to go into all of it. These cities are connected, but they're different. They cause us to pause for a minute, to think differently about what is Sogdiana and what isn't. And with that, I just want to re-echo Farhad's discussion of Marsmanda. If the region is Marsmanda, this is probably where the market would be. And of course, nothing happens without our team and our sponsors and our enthusiasm and our new partners, some of whom are in the room. Nico, I've got you on there. And thank you.
thank you very much for this, all the speakers for this presentation of these amazing sites and very interesting finds. And well, when I see this iron production and the early Turkic grave, I cannot, I can't but to remind myself about the genealogical legend of the Ashina clan. You know, that the Ashina clan, the royal clan of the early Turks, they were served, according to the Chinese sources, they were servants of the Ruran, and they were living in the Golden Mountains, and they were ironsmiths. So they specialized in iron production. So this is probably what drew them to this place originally. And yeah, and the ceramics that you've shown is clearly seems to be end of the 7th, 8th century. But perhaps there is really a link between the specialization in iron production and the early Turks. Yeah, thank you. And we are looking forward for new finds from this site.
All I would say is, I mean, we've only excavated for two years, right? So, I mean, and Tugunbulak. The wealth of setup, though, from Taşbulak gives us, it's good that we waited in a sense, because we were able to gestate for a number of years about how to think about the problem. But honestly, none of us expected this. The workshop, or whatever you want to call it, the factory, the production center, it was not what I anticipated initially. Well, I mean, we knew that there would be iron production because we had smaller workshops, but that scale and that size on the tower, I mean, that was surprising to me.
Yeah. I just wanted to add that the radiocarbon dating, if we trust it, shows like a bit earlier, like 100 years earlier than end of 7th century. So it shows end of 6th century.
It's not in the pottery.
Huh?
It's not in the pottery yet. You will get it.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, I'm overwhelmed by all these novelties. I have just two small remarks. Michael, it's just a guess, but you suggested that maybe something politically happened around the 680, perhaps explaining this burial. Well, what crosses my mind is that it's a period when the last remains of the Western Turkish Khaganate disintegrated due to Chinese intrigues, and they gave way to another power, which was the Turgesh. So maybe there was a kind of intra-Turkish strife at that time, but surely Søren has more precise views about that. Another question is to Farhad about the chronology of the Muslim burials. You imply that these burials, the Muslim burials you have, are seems to be earlier than what is documented elsewhere in Central Asia. Well, I don't agree completely, because there are at least two sites where the transition between the pre-Islamic Zoroastrian type burial and the Islamic burial have been studied in continuity. One is Mizdarkhan in Khwarezm, and one is, several sites in Chach, studied by Gena Bogomolov, who actually published the results conveniently in an article in the volume Islamisation de l'Asie centrale, edited by Étienne de la Vessière. Well, at Mizdarkhan, you have the break occurs in the funerary practices occurs in the middle of the 8th century. Quite precisely, and I think the same can be observed at Tokkala. And after the middle of the 8th century, you don't have ossuaries anymore, all that is replaced by Muslim burial. There are some transitional forms, but the change is quite sharp. And as far as I remember, the same pattern is observed in Chach. Actually, there seems to be some survivals of the restraint practices, such as avoiding direct contact of the body with the earth, etc. But the change is here, and it's again mid-8th century. So it wouldn't put your burial so far later of the common picture. I don't know of other sites where the transition has been observed. So, well, as you know, or as you all know, it's not possible anymore in Central Asia to excavate Muslim cemeteries. It was possible in Soviet days. And so I don't know other examples. At Panjikent, for example, do you observe the transition between the...
There are a couple of burials.
A couple, yes.
By Luzhnevskaya.
Yes,
which
yes.
seem to be early Islamic, but
Yeah.
they're not like that. They're
Yes, yes.
not, completely Sharia.
The advantage in
It's a couple of burials. It's a whole necropolis of Dashtur Takon.
Well, but there are Christian things and others.
Yeah, but they're completely different. It's a different story.
It's a different, yeah.
As at Mizdarkan,
Sharia burial.
at Mizdarkan, it's really massive. You have many examples. In Yagodin's book, it's full of graves, and the same in Gena's study.
Thank you. I just want to tell you that we have 6 or 7 radiocarbon dates from the burials in Taj Bulat. One is 720 to 750. The rest, 5 of them are from 800, 820, 850, 890. But the graveyards are very ascetic Sharia Muslim graves, which makes me ask to think that it was some sort of community of practice arrived here directly from somewhere at that time, and they started this thing over there. If you remember the work by Patricia Krohn, who was writing about the prophetess movements in Khorasan.
A bit controversial.
Okay, but the idea was that...
We specialize in controversial.
there were,
That's Mandy's.
Okay. Okay.
there were some movements against state Islam, and they were oppressed by the government, by Umayyads and Abbasids, and when they were oppressed, they fled, they ran away to desert and steppes towards the Turks.
But if these ascetic Muslims kept their market day according to the Zoroastrian calendar, Salut Pasha's
Yeah, but we think it might be related to one of those events. Might be, I don't know. But 750, I mean, it's there, it's radiocarbon. Pasha says, I don't believe it, I don't know.
Too early. The event is actually happening in 780. 788, 781, Mukhana. So the only one which we have.
No, there were many movements like Mukanna. You are not only talking about Mukanna, but there were several movements like Mukanna, before and after.
No, Sharik was local Mukhana.
Yeah. So, and in any case, this is a community of practice of very early time, and it is ascetic Islam.
Very exciting. I would be even more excited about the burial 20 years ago when I was trying to find Turkic burials. Because as you know, it's really only the third of these rider burials that look exactly like the Turkic burials that we have in Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, in the Altai and Mongolia. With regard to the scenario, there can be a lot of speculation about it, but I think it's interesting that all 3 burials actually seem to date into the same horizon, like the late 7th century. And that is a chronology that was for a long time not accepted for the Ulugbek one. It was proposed by Ambros, in the 70s, and a lot of people thought, Ambrose chronology is way too late, it must be 6th century. But it turned out, no, it is the 7th century, the second half of the century, actually after the end of the Vesta, as Franz pointed out. It's after the sort of temporary end, or after the end of an independent Ashinar Western Turk Khaganate. But what happened afterwards is this 40 years. It's not that the Turkish come immediately. It takes 40 years where we have these puppet Khagans. They are appointed by the Chinese, effectively. And what I think, something that could be a possible scenario is, while these, and there was a bit of infighting between two different tribal groups, yeah, that is loss of cohesion in the steppes. A lot of former retainers, elites, they sought new employment. They came closer also to the cities. They were hired. They came close. I think that is also a scenario. How that is related to the settlement, to the iron production, I think is a different question.
Well, if I could just respond. Yeah, I mean, obviously we are coming at you, everyone, with more questions than answers at this stage. We do have in the bag of which, as long as we don't mess them up and open them carefully and can get information from them, they should also provide us with, some corroboration, at least with the radiocarbon. Of course, the late 7th century is a terrible time for radiocarbon. The curve goes like this. So you have to have a lot of dates to model it out, which we did do. So, we're getting late 7th century, but there's issues with the curve in that time period. The question which your astute comment prompts is, again, the association with we know that individual was buried as a Turk, no question. We know that the coin that's floating around is a coin that is traded amongst people who may or may not be Turks, but it has a face of someone and a tamga of someone who is a Turk. The question is who builds the city, or who builds the thing in the first instance? Now, one trench, one season won't answer that question, but we have time. Next summer we'll open up the big pyramidical, thing. I'm hoping for, anything from wall paintings to an armory to who knows, right? I still have Topkapi on call. But
Paintings.
But we're also running through this process of all the other studies. So we're doing all the slag analysis.
3 quarts of coins on each wall.
Please. Anyone just send your wish list and we'll go. Anyway, yeah. Please, Kiana.
I was very interested in the kaolin because I have a lot of questions about that. Based on the picture you sent, I don't know if you show, it's 2 chamber. You show 2 different pieces of iron, so it's 2 different chamber. And is the kaolin, how is it found there? So it's bricks. It's mixed with bricks. It's coated on.
The kaolin is in kiln walls that are not those particular furnaces.
Okay.
So the kiln walls are somewhere else on the site, and we know of one kiln that we touched with our trenches in 2022. We caught the very edge of it. I didn't show it for time purposes. It takes hours to kind of. But we know there's one big circular kiln built of burned brick that we cut just to find. That brick kiln, if it is in fact what we see with the kiln walls, would have been mudded up, and what we get on the rebuild is them collecting these huge kiln wall pieces, which are collapsed, to use them as foundations for later houses. So those are just chunks with kaolin face, like really, really heavily wasted, like inner face.
Where did they get it?
On site.
No, on site.
Yeah, I mean you mean the
kaolin.
That's a question.
The kaolin.
Farhan can answer this more.
The kaolin is found around Tashkent in the Ahangaran. In the Kurama, Western Tian Shan mountains, like white kaolin. Now there are some places, mining places. I think also Burakov has written about some mining places of ancient kaolin, but it's not of large industrial scale, it's small spots. But in our case, I don't know where they brought it. We didn't do any geochemistry or something for kaolin?
And-
It's a good question.
And for the iron, because I was thinking about the chamber, are these chamber connected or are all different kiln?
They're connected in a
So
series.
it's like
You can close it and then you open it up.
so it's like the Chinese Long Yao, the dragon kiln.
Yeah, there's a long chamber that goes to the edge of the building. And I should note, I didn't
There is
say
a
this.
slope. Oh, it's
Yeah,
flat.
they just they put bricks inside and then they knock it out when they.
So
when
the
they-
furnace is on the back. How is it
furnace is
con-
into the paksa. So the paksa is built like this table, high, and then they carve into the paksa like this much.
Ancient wall. They used ancient
They
wall.
use the wall, or not, no, it's not the ancient wall, it's their wall, because
Yeah.
it's to the ground, down to the bedrock. So they're using paksa as the basis, the background of this kiln structure, this small furnace, I should call it, not a kiln. And then this furnace and the next furnace next to it if you're excavating, it's like soft in between. So there must have been some kind of thing between it blocking the two, or it was shared, like a double chamber. It's possible, I suppose. Maybe harder to control atmosphere or something. But when you're excavating, it's just soft powder between the two chambers. And then it continues on, and it runs to the outer edge of the building. And what I should note is that we are on this peak. I showed you the photograph of this like steep terraced side. Even to this day, as we excavate, it is gusting winds, really, really high wind. So they're using the wind as to stoke the fire, right? So they're getting natural aeration and natural oxygen into their fires from the wind. So they're somewhere in the outer edges of the building. We'll hopefully catch this in the next round of excavations. There should be ports or chimneys. We do have also chimney structures, like stone chimneys, in the middles of these things.
In the middle. Okay. I was just thinking about. I have in mind the Chinese is called the dragon kiln when the furnace is on the back, and then you have people that have to control the air on the beginning at the end, right? You have to open and close
It
for
could be
the
like this as
aeration,
well.
and so they are all connected.
We do have a
Multiple
chimney.
chamber.
There's a chimney chute that comes off into the middle of the room, probably made of stone. We have the stone foundation of it, and it goes up. The entry of the air goes out to the back end of the building, and it kind of gets lost in
So it's
the.
the same concept.
Yeah, same
Interesting. I'm wondering if the thing about circulation of knowledge, how they acquire this. That's why I asked the kaolin if it's some connection with the production of ceramic.
Yeah.
Because it's the same concept in
We
China.
also have ceramic wasters in small amounts.
And the coin in the textile, I think if it's attached to the belt, it's possible there was a tiny sack pouch with the coin inside.
Yeah, that was a
Is
bag.
that, yeah.
Yeah, it's a bag. It's like a bark bag or something.
That
It's very
Turkic
fragile.
people use.
Yeah.
Yui or Turkic descendant, let's say Uyghur thing, they all have the same style.
That's
So
right.
it's possible.
Maybe. Yeah.
Hello. I just wanted to say that handle could have been for mortar and pestle. You know, to grind
But it's made of
metal.
ceramic, and normally those are made of stone.
Yeah,
This
but
one is
still,
ceramic. Yeah, it's possible for. I don't know.
yeah, that's
Possible.
all.
Did you find the mines for the iron?
This is a question, yeah. But
The,
maybe-
the whole area in the geological maps is rich in iron. I mean, not for modern iron production, but for ancient period, yes. It's hematite and magnetite over there. Yes.
But you didn't really.
We didn't find. No, we didn't look for it.
Well, I have to say, first of all, well, it's time for me to say thank you for inviting me because, well, I came out of my little place in Brighton Beach, where I usually sit alone in my house and do research, right? And suddenly I am in a big field with everybody who are doing the thing, and that's great. I feel suddenly inspired, like part of a process. In some way, this is embarrassing also because Soren's guys, you guys, and to some extent even Pasha, although he's more traditional, all show something of the 21st century, and I feel completely outdated. Right? I just feel like I'm a hoe. Yet I'm glad that I can help somehow with my coinage That makes me feel part of a process. It's very nice. So generally speaking, well, it's great. It's simply, these 2 days made my day for a long time, right? So thank you for organizers. Thank you for inviting me. And a few notes specifically. The building, well, what called in Russian literature, коридорно-гребенчатая планировка, this long, narrow rooms with a central corridor, com type of plan. Well, it has nothing to do with military. It's simply a system of rooms with vaults, and usually in castles and in fortified places, it's because the first floor has to support the second. But it's also the best anti-fire system, because this is the only type of a building which would not have wood in the roofs. Everything else would actually have wooden roof in Sogdiana. This is pure brick walled. That's why you have it. That's number one. Number two, judging by the size, walls, type of the building, this is end of the 6th century. It's not 7th, it's probably end of the 6th century. Huge too. Quite an amazing story. So you got a jackpot. It's really something serious. Very, very interesting. I understand that now you have to work like crazy in order to do the stuff.
That's
right?
Sanjot's job.
Yeah, but I am congratulating you on one side, on the other side, well, it's time to do it, right? So, but that is absolutely a major production center, no question about it. It's an amazing story. And of course, there's one thing which I would like to know. How far it's from Nuchkat? Nuchkat is Nushkent. Nushkent is 30 kilometers from Harkana. Harkana is actually what we now have in the Tamerlan Gates. How far? Give me the kilometers.
From Tamerlan Gates?
Is it current Bakhmal? Village of
Slightly under Bakhmal, about 8 kilometers below Bakhmal is Nuchkat.
40 or 50 kilometers?
Well, that's exactly what Idrisi says, from Harkana to Marsmanda to Marhala. 2-day route. 30 kilometers, 2-day route, guys. You are sitting in Marsmanda. So it's good. It's no question about it. And Marsmanda is a dream city. Everybody was trying to find it for the last 50 years. Right, since Albaum was here there in 19... since 46. Everybody. Burikov, Sverchkov, I mean anybody who was there. Right? So you got it. However, don't get excited. Because Khoinaj was in Zamin. Right? Because the ruler who was sitting over this place, this is production center. That is where economic power, industrial power is, but the ruler would be sitting in the key point over the river. So the ruler would be sitting in Zamin, and most likely, and that's where the coins were minted, probably. However, that doesn't mean that I cannot be useful, and if you need me to address any points, I would be glad to. And then once more, I would like to say that it was an amazing 2 days. I mean, with showing Bukhara, with showing this stuff, with showing Apazeravshan, including Misha's amazing talk about Zoroastrianism. Well, guys, you did it.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, once again, thank you very much for this fantastic story and this fantastic presentation. So with 3 papers in one row, so we can get some picture of what is going around there and what is. So I'm really impressed by the work and by the methods. Yeah, so the methods of your archaeology and methods of archaeology I used to be. It's quite difficult to harmonize them like the text and the archaeology itself. So it's really fantastic with the way what you do and how you do. So I have a number of maybe comments, maybe suggestions, maybe some simple questions about all the 3 papers. So first of all, about Tash Bulak. Yeah, so it is, of course, I am surprised as everybody with this quite typically Islamic graves with these very early dates. And so if, the coins which you have there, the coins and the pottery, I think they're not from the graves, but from the site. So if you think that this graveyard is the graveyard of this site, then it should be 10th, 11th century, 10th, 11th, 12th century. So you have the C14 dates, a big series of them. So if I am maximalist, I would say that just C14 doesn't work at all. Well, and sometimes I think that's the case. Yeah, consider me a heretic, whatever. Well, minimally, we should consider that there because of the mines, because of the uranium mines nearby. So the the calibration of the dates should be different. Because what I looked at, what I saw at Tugun Bulak, it's also, I think it is a bit later than the dates you suggest with C14. Also, it's not so crucial there. As for, thank you very much for the paper about hydrology, about the canals of the site. It's a very interesting and very important approach, how and why you do that, and it's really important to understand. So, there are some internal data which we have to consider doing that. First of all, the first question is, was there agriculture or not? If there was agriculture, you need very much more water. If that is only the site and the ironsmiths and so on, you need much less water. You don't need flowing water there. It can be brought by camels or donkeys. Yeah, so in sufficient amount from the close neighborhood. So what we have so documented with this Sakao in Bukhara in 19th century. Yeah, so there was no water inside the houses, and it was brought by the boys every day. So that's a possible situation. If there is agriculture, the question is, what is the precipitation there? Precipitation, how much rainfall, snowfall?
Mira, you know the precipitation number, don't you? It's like 500.
Oh no, it's 300.
300 millimeters per year, but I don't know if that includes snow.
Oh, that includes snow. But I think it doesn't reflect the mountain highland, because usually mountain highland has more precipitation. So maybe I think that 400 meter is the yearly precipitation.
Okay, that's great, because that is enough for the dry for dry crops, for bagara.
Rain-fed.
If I could stop you though. So it's a question now of scale.
Yeah.
So let's take the minimum.
Yeah.
If we have 45 hectares of architectural population, making, smelting, doing everything. Taj Bulak, for example, we have men, women, and children, so it's not only smelters. This is a settlement of full population, even individuals who are certainly not metallurgists, right? This gentleman with the physical deformity, or whatever we can call it now. So these are full social systems. Tugun Bulak is at least 10 times bigger. And I didn't have time to show you the south side of the mound, of the mounded area, but I am very positive that we have surface finds in those areas too. The walls.
They have a river in the middle.
Yeah. Exactly. So if that's the case, we're looking at 10,000 to many more during the population, and that means that the fields in the particular area that we could grow would not support the population. So one way or the other, you're importing grain. So now it becomes a question of labor. If you can't grow enough populational food, why even start? Just start trading for it, like at Taj Bulak. You have all these things coming up the valley anyway, and invest all your energy into trade, metallurgy, animals. So my guess is, and we're now testing, of course, using our partnership with Dorian Fuller, who's an archaeobotanist, and we've done, of course, with Rep. Spengler at Taj Bulak, a full systematic agro-pastoral assessment of what actually you can do there. And the growing season, as you know, is 2 months.
Yeah.
So the likelihood is that they're not doing their own agriculture, even though they could squeeze something out. In fact, the Mars Manda quote from Ibn Halkal says, they can grow cereals, but the ability to do it and the willingness to do it are two different things.
Yeah, but also no fruit.
And no fruit, and it freezes in the winter. So, I mean, I think that we don't have agriculture. And so indeed, the rainfall plays a role though, because the industrial need for water will also require natural water and the recharge of those artisanal, artesian water sources, the underground water sources. So very important.
Yeah, so that's very important. And I think another important thing which Farhad mentioned, that the name Tugun Bulak means the source of the dam. And so, to my knowledge, in the toponymy of and the local legends about the various sites, so they are, of course, full of complete fictional things. But when it speaks about there something related to water canals, the water direction, and so on, it is the part which is largely truthworthy. So if it is called Tugun Bulak, there should be a kind of dam there. Yeah. So I think it may be a hint for the future archaeological research. And the very last point, and the point which I think puzzles us very much, is the size of Tugun Bulak, so which is more than half of Samarkand, in the very remote place. And I think that here it could be interesting to make a comparison with the sites of the Chuvole. So if our Sogdian conference would have happened like 5 or 10 years ago, half of the papers will be about the long walls. Now it is somehow passed away, but so there you can look. So there are long walls. Sometimes they are octagonal, quadrigonal. Sometimes they are not. So there is a large territory surrounded by the walls, approximately like your size, and inside of it there are here and there. There is a citadel, there is a Shahristan, and there are several clusters of the cottage houses located here and there, and between them the agricultural ground. So maybe that could explain. But thank you very much once again for this fantastic work.
Hello, thank you very much. I was really enjoyed. This is a quite illuminating thing. I'm actually a landscaper, though I was born in Uzbekistan, and that's why I came here. And my interest was more because I've either in your article, Farhad, or somewhere else that you mentioned that it was abandoned because of deforestation. Archa forest, right, that was just wiped out. So for me, it's like very. So judging by the pictures, does it mean that like back in the day it was all heavily forested? Is there like any archaeodendrology?
Yes, we think so. We did some geoarchaeology with T.R. Kidder from Washington University in St. Louis. And the idea is that this area naturally should be covered like the nearby natural reserve, full of juniper forest. But we think that they have cut all the trees for iron production, for any production. And because of the nature of those forests, like juniper forest in Central Asia with very dry, arid climate, it's almost impossible to regrow it naturally, even after 1,000 years. So the ecosystem is very fragile. Once they cut the trees, they like made bald the area in diameter or radius of 5 kilometers. And then it became very long for them to carry wood, so they moved the site to another place, their own settlement, and they started another new settlement. We have found now around 5 or 6 similar sites in the same area, in the other river valleys of the same ecosystem. And in every one of them, we have similar sites like Tashbulak, not Tugun Bulak, but like Tashbulak. So we think they jumped every maybe 10, maybe 20, maybe 50 years when they damaged the ecosystem, and then the environment became very high energy, flash floods. So they moved away and they abandoned the old places, we think.
Thank you so much, Ahmad.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Let's send the 3 presenters away with another round of applause. Our very last contribution to our workshop today. It's not on the program, but Sanchot mentioned it yesterday in the introduction. Saroor Ghanimati will give her personal thoughts on Gitti Asapai, and you're welcome.
So just to introduce Saroor Ghanimati, as I mentioned in my introduction, you have to turn it on, so that's why. I gave you some time to turn it on. Our graduate work with Gitti Asapai, and Saroor Ghanimati was my classmate then, and she works in eastern Iran at the site of Kuwe Khaja. So that's her excavation, her project, with others, of course. And in that capacity, she had the great fortune of traveling around Iran with Gitti Asapai. So we thought it would be nice to, as I said in the introduction, to bookend this conference, to revisiting Gitti for a moment before we end this conference, but with a personal twist. I spoke a lot about her professional life and academia, and Saroor is just going to touch, while we still have a little bit of time, on Gitti as a person and Gitti in the field. So please help me welcome Dr. Saroor Ghanimati.
Okay, today I give you a little story of Gitti and I, basically. So what I have called this talk is called By Gitti from Sistan and Baluchistan to Turkmenistan. Okay, so Gitti, I was still a student working with Gitti. I came from a background in architecture. So both Gitti and I, we were scared of each other in the beginning because she thought I'm not good enough to get to this field, and I thought she doesn't like me. She was scared of me in the beginning. She told me, she said, you were so serious and, adamant about everything. But she had me work on my application for a year just to check and see if I could write. And then she got the name of the buildings in San Francisco that I have designed. And then in a year, she said, okay, come back. And then that's how I became her student. I was going to Sistan since 1995 to check the site of Kuhe Khaje. And Kuhe Khaje is in Sistan. It's in this little part of the Sistan because 1/10 of Sistan is in Afghanistan. So we flew from Tehran to Zahedan. We spent some time exploring Gitti, exploring the villages around here to see what we can find. So we spent some day there. We went to Saravan, which is the most beautiful village in Iran. It's just gorgeous. And then we took, somebody in the crowd remembered me from the earlier trips, and he came and he said, I'll give you a ride, because we had to go to Zabul. And this is about 2.5 hours drive, and the space in between is full of caravansarais and camel station and things like that. We had a great time doing everything. So we got to Zabul. So that was the airport we got in. And this is what Gitti called it. I put about Gitti with Gitti, but from Sistan and Baluchistan to Turkmenistan, because that was her main idea of going through this trip. So from this airport, which is an international airport on the border, we took the car. I mean, somebody recognized me and said, oh, I'll give you a ride. So we got into the car. Gitti was a bit scared, but then she relaxed immediately, and we continued. Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay. We arrived in Zabul and to this building, which used to be old British consulate and a clinic building. And here is the entrance, so I don't know if you could see it. We had a car, two-seater car, but it's a van. So the rest of us, we stayed in the van. We put Gitti in the car to be safe. And this is the building from inside. This is the entrance. This is the inside. And then they invited us in the same building for tea and cigarettes. We wanted to smoke because this lady, Mariam Karim, she was our photographer, and she whispered to me, said, can we go out and have a cigarette? And I said, yeah, let's go. But Gitti heard it and said, wait for me, I want a cigarette as well. So she joined with the tea and cigarettes and started warming up with everybody. And then we go. Yeah? Okay. Then we rushed to go to the bazaar because Gitti had seen me in the Baluchi dress, and she liked the idea that you can work with Baluchi dress in an easier way. So we rushed to the bazaar, but it was too late after tea and cigarette. It was getting dark, and they were closing the bazaar. So the middle gentleman, a gorgeous Baluchi person, we asked him if he knows anywhere we can get some Baluchi dress today, right now. And he said, yes, 2 people. So he sent us to these 2 people, and we bought Baluchi dress for the next day Gitti could use it. So then we started exploring the landscape of Sistan, everywhere, and mainly the rivers and the lakes. It's unbelievably beautiful and gorgeous, and you see so many relics of the old time around the rivers, in the desert. We don't know what they were, but there's full of archaeological sites, and then you have a caravanserai within a day distance everywhere you go, and there are still camels are stationed there that you can use. But I think mostly it's being used with the drug dealers from the other side of the border. But Gitti had never been to Iran, so she made me promise I don't take any pictures because I guess of our outfit, or if somebody, some agent is watching us, things like that. And I said, okay, but I couldn't keep on my word every time I could without bugging her. I took a photo of her. I thought, you know, one day we need to have all of this to remind us. So she loved the area. So then we go to all of these other sites. You know, Sistan has had both a lot of rivers, but a lot of them are dry now because of the illegal dams on Afghanistan side, so they don't let the water get in. So the most luscious area of Iran is now dry. I mean, once in a year, if they have good rain, they open the door, the water, so it gets there. But they've made 10 dams on Helmand River, illegal dams in Helmand River. And actually, from the time that, from 1920 onward, my father fought for the right of water, which, you know, happens for a week, then they close it, and then, you know, many, many different people have come. The water, they promise the water will come, but it doesn't on a normal basis. Then we went to explore more of the landscape, and then on that day, it was May, the end of spring, and usually that's when the wind of 120 days begins. And when that happens, it's like a tornado, and everybody rushes out to get to somewhere without the dust and all of that. So this is one of those, and I was the only one in this trip that I was in charge of photographs. So because Giti was very serious about it, don't take any photo of me. But how could I not? So then we got into the landscape of Koh Khaje. When the water is open, Koh Khaje is in the middle of a gorgeous lake, but when they close the water, it's barren landscape, which is very depressing in that case. But when we were there with Giti, we had plenty of, I mean, the lake was full of water, and people go fishing. They have their special way of fishing, and then they have two types of boats. One is called Tutan, which is a local production, and the regular boat. Giti wanted to get on the Tutan, but Tutan is sort of hard because it's made from just bunch of cane, yes, and yeah, cane, and actually I was scared that she fall into the water, so we took the regular boat. So then, after all the other places, Giti said, I want to see Koh Khaje, and I said, fine. So we have 4 people here. This is Giti. This is Siamak Atami. He's a historical expert. That's me. And that's Alireza Khosravi, who was the head of the Cultural Heritage Organization. He helped a lot. So this is where Giti wanted to get on Tutan, but the guy said it's better not, because he was scared that Giti may fall into the water. It's a very shallow water, maybe 12 feet in the deep part. But it's beautiful, because when all of those plants, they come into flower, everything is red. So we are in the boat getting closer to Koh Khaje, the temple complex. It's a Zoroastrian temple complex. And it's been there since the beginning of recognition that this mountain was Mountain of the Lord. It was from then on, they had a fishing village originally, smaller fishing village at the bottom of the site here. And then little by little, this part grew and went on top. And that's when what we have, we are now calling it Sasanian time, but it has several layers. Actually, some work has been done, and I believe it was Professor Gulini who mentioned that it also goes to the Achaemenid period. Then some years later, Mansur Sajjadi worked there for a little while, and then he discovered a piece of covered land that he thought it's from the Parthian. So I personally think it has all the layers of Parthian, Achaemenid, and Sasanian, different eras, because wherever you touch, you find something related to that era. And recently, they have been excavating here, and there's a huge, I don't know, a hall maybe, because we had one here, which when I did my thesis, called it Gahan Barkhane, but it dropped, I think, purposely. They wanted to fix it, but everything collapsed 2 years ago on this side. But they have been excavating here, and they have found new building. My thesis was that this was a pilgrim place, and also this was the city, I mean, the little village, the original that ended up to the temple area. And also my thesis was that the eastern part that is collapsed was like a monastery, Erbadestan, because we didn't find anything related to a palace. There was no service area for a palace people, none of that. So that's how he went. But we went. But it's not only, this is the temple area, but then you go on the top and you have another building there, and also you have another building there. That building is called Chehel Dokhtaran. It was meant for women when they had their monthly cycle. So according to Zoroastrian, they were not supposed to look at the moon and stars and everything. So when we get to that, all the windows are at this height. So they cannot look up. And then we have several bases of watchtower between here and here. And this is called Kokezal, which means the, what is Gombad? Dome. Dome. They call it Dome of the Zal. Zal is Rostam's father, because was albino, white hair, so they're calling that with that name. But over there, with France, the article, we've written about several parts of this, and this one, I have concluded with enough material that this was a observatory during 6th century. And it's a huge thing I've written, and nobody has dismissed it yet. So it's under print, and then France has a wonderful addition to it on the painting, because this site has given us the largest collection of pre-Islamic painting. 12 pieces are in New Delhi Museum, but they don't show it to us. To some people they show, but not to us. I don't know why. And those were sent by R.L. Stein to New Delhi. And then we have, Arlstein. And then we have the work of Ernst Herzfeld, and a lot of those paintings, either they're hidden, lost, many things, but one new one, which is a queen and a king, Franz wrote about it, it's disappearing. It's losing paints, it's losing all of that. So it's sad about this site. It's a very unique place. So closer to Koh Khaja, you can see how large it is, and this is the new thing they opened. And also this part, because we had the wall here, but they're working on it. I don't know who, I know who it is, he is, but he just do it randomly. It's not very methodological as it should be. Now, we are with Gitti. So Gitti asked me again, please don't take picture of me, but I couldn't help it eventually. In a few places in, when we went to Saravon, those things, I was a good girl. I didn't take any picture, but then I felt it's not enough. So this was the outside terrace to the whole mountain and the building. So Gitti stood there. We had a great time with Baluchi dress for Gitti because she was so happy that she has this dress to go everywhere. And this, you go on top of the mountain, and we were taking a break, so Gitti was studying everything. And this is, I think I'm in 2 pictures only, so it's not important. I made myself, I tried to hide and take the pictures. So Gitti had bad allergy to dust, so she was very conscious about it. And this is right above the fire temple. So this is one of them. Then we went to this other village that they were told this professor is coming from San Francisco or here. They all came out, all the Baluchi men, did a stick dance for Gitti. And from the beginning, we all fell in love with Baluchi men because they are very handsome, fit, tall, and everything. So Gitti constantly, whenever we were with them, said, they're really handsome. And I would say, of course they're handsome. And then she would go, granted that they have to take a shower, but they're very handsome. And I keep telling her, Gitti, we are not doing anything with them. They don't need to do the shower thing. But it became a joke between us. So everywhere we went, she would make a joke. Do they have shower? Things like. We had a great time. It was not a professor and a student. It turned to be something else. So this is the dance in her honor. Then we got to Birjan. Birjan is a southern part of the Khorasan. Khorasan is large. Birjan is where the major saffron, 22 tons of it is produced there, so everybody's rich. And it's very different. So from there, before we go to any other place, Gitti said, I would like to go, because the cultural heritage, they gave us full service and everything. So Gitti said, I want to go to Bazehur. So we did go. These are close to Birjand. We went to Bazehur. Bazehur means the prayer of the sun. And after checking the whole thing, Gitti thought that this was a sort of a beacon. At first, I didn't go totally with it, but when in the other, I don't know if you could see, there's a man standing there. So it's a huge building. But I said, beacon, you cannot make the fire in there and do what you're trying to do. They are built on spaces between a day of travel. So one day you go with camel or whatever, then you get to the other one. So this one, then later I figured the way they made fire in the ground there, they could add various chemical things to it. And when the smoke comes up, has different color depending on what you put, like Indian movies. What you put on fire, the smoke with different color would come out, and the other people on the other beacon, I'm calling it, they would know the message. Then from there we went to this mansion, Alam mansion. Alam was the most powerful person connected to Qajar period, but they had the majority of the saffron cultivation, the best in the world. They gave us a huge bucket gift to my mother, and she was shocked. She said, I can never finish this. But that was the thing. So it's a huge mansion. I couldn't fit all of it into one picture, so this is the beginning. But this gentleman, unfortunately, I've forgotten the name. It was 30 years ago almost. So he was the local head of the cultural heritage. He arranged for a lot of places to see that normally nobody goes to see those places. So he was very helpful in that. Khuzaima Alam is famous. He became later. All right. So now this is the rest of the mansion. So you can see Gitti kept hiding. This is Gitti. But over there, I said, Gitti one. Let me have one picture. So he did. She said, okay. Then Gitti went on the top of the roof. It's beautiful roof with wind catchers, wind towers. Badgir, yes, Badgir. And she loved this place. And she didn't want to come down, but we had to go. Then I said, Gitti, you have to see the Garden of Alam, is famous. So this gardener was the original gardener. When he was very young, he began to work there, and then Alam was gone. During Pahlavi, he stayed there. It was beautiful. I'm going fast. This is a village called Reich. It's all gorgeous, made of stone. People near Birjand in summer, because those are desert cities. In summer, they go into this village. There's no lock, anything. For summer, they stay there, and then they leave the place. On top, and Gitti is on the side, Siamak and Mariam. And on the top. and to the stones. We have this Parthian writing and the graffiti on the stone, which is Middle Persian, I think Parthian. Then when we returned from the car, they knew we were coming from cultural heritage, so the gardener, put a rose for Giti, not for us, and said it's for that Khanum. And then from there we went up and we go to near Mashhad, Haruniye. At Haruniye, Giti was so happy. He said it's the most balanced Islamic building there. So you see, I continuously hid in different places so I can take pictures without Giti seeing me. So if you see the scales is like this because I was far. So this is again Giti around the building. It's a gorgeous building. It was okay. Okay, then we headed out to from Khorasan to Bandian. That's the end of it. But it was unbelievable, the road. I thought these are the steppes of Asia. When I got into it, it's like every pictures, you see of that. It's unbelievable. I was hanging out of the window for 2 hours to get all of this pictures, and so the rest of the way. And here Giti and everybody's looking for toilet, I guess. Sorry, I have to say. I'm gonna kill this computer. Okay. So then as we went on, okay. Reza Shah moved the whole group of Kurds to Khorasan. So these are the people that we met on the way. They were Kurdish people. They were coming from a funeral, but they picked the puppies. They said, okay, and then we get to Dar-e-Gaz in Bandian, which is at the border of Turkmenistan, and this is Giti there, and they were opening the fire altar, but I put some of the pictures. It's a Sasanian dynastic shrine in Dar-e-Gaz, and the person who's in charge and doing the work is Mehdi Rahbar, archaeologist. He did the main thing. We were just visiting, and they opened the fire altar that they used. And some of the, there's a lot of that sort, yeah. There's a lot, but I just put a few. It's there. Then on the way back from another route, we stopped at Kalat Naderi, which was apparently unfinished tomb of Nader Shah Afshar. And there's a lot of Indian motifs all over this building. So even the flowers, everything is like Indian. So Giti had a wonderful time. So the last thing I have to show you, because we were all the time hiding in order to take the photo, there was a little mosque called 12th Imam next to Kalat Naderi, which was our last stop there. And then from there we went to Mashhad and then took the fly back to Tehran. That was the trip. Thank you. All right.
Thank you to everybody who spoke. Thank you for all the really spectacular papers. I think it really gelled in a way we couldn't have imagined. We may have believed we could put it together that way, but it turned out, way better than we ever thought. I think Sir Franz probably agree. It was lively. It was so much information shared. And you hit all the right notes also with your papers in thinking about the book and thinking about, how do you publish on an area about Sanabiana. So, I think we are coming away energized even at this late hour after 2 days of arts. I think we still have, energy. So I want to thank the speakers, the chairs. I want to thank all our students and faculty and other members of the audience for coming for 2 full days, and hopefully we'll see you at the next event. And thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you.